Can you say that your company is free from cyber attack? If you hesitate for a second, then you need to watch this. I'm breaking down step by step on how you can run risk assessment in your organization. To manage risk effectively, we use two primary tools: the risk register and the risk metrics. The risk register is a detailed logbook. It is the database of all the identified risks. It's like a centralized document used to assess, mitigate, and identify the risk in an organization. While the risk metrics is like a visual dashboard, it helps us to prioritize risk at a glance. Think of it this way: the risk register holds the data, while the risk metrics helps you to understand the data. The risk register and the risk metrics are not separate, they feed each other. I'm going to show you how you can create one right now. Let's dive into it.
We are going to be using ISO 27005 guidelines to conduct our risk assessment. From this ISO 27005 document, this is the overview of everything in ISO 27005. So you can get this document and calm down to go through it and study it later. So the guideline in ISO 27005, these the steps. The first one is context establishment. So the second one is risk identification. The third one is risk analysis. Fourth one is risk evaluation, and the fifth one is risk treatment. So for risk identification, I have a case study that we're going to use to perform this. But if it's in a real world organization, you have to talk to people, interview some people, to find out where there's for you to be able to find out where there is an issue, or where there is a risk, or where there's a vulnerability that needs to be patched, or risk that needs to be mitigated in your organization. So because we don't, this is a case study, so I'm going to be sharing the case study that we're going to be using. So I developed this case study. It's SwiftShop e-commerce. So SwiftShop e-commerce is a rapidly expanding technology solution provider. It has experienced exclusive growth in the last 2 years. While the growth is positive, it has exposed significant gaps in the cybersecurity posture. The thing with risk is the more an organization is expanding, is growing, is business operations are expanding and growing, is the more risk that they tend to face. And the higher the growth, the higher the risk. The lower the growth, the lower the risk. So you cannot compare a multi-million company to just a startup. The risk that the multi-million companies will be facing will be higher than the one that the startup will be facing. So SwiftShop have actually done their risk identification, and they have found out that the first risk that they pose is unauthorized access to sensitive data. That is, a former employee who is now a direct competitor was found to have access to the company's core project management system for 2 weeks after the termination due to a failure in the onboarding process. So imagine after a former employee in SwiftShop still has access to SwiftShop company's data, even after he has stopped working for them. That means there's no formal access control in SwiftShop, which it's not good. It's a risk that needs to be controlled. So the second risk is untrained employees as sustainable social engineering attack. So SwiftShop have not been conducting a cybersecurity awareness program. The employees are not, and of course, if they have been performing a cybersecurity awareness program, they will be able to know about this access control, to be able to how to properly onboard people when they have stopped working for them. And the third risk that they identify is inability to demonstrate compliance with industry standards. So SwiftShop e-commerce lost a multi-million-dollar contract to a major financial service client because they could not provide proof of a mature information security program or an established framework like ISO 27001. So SwiftShop they are handling information, they're handling people's information and data, and they don't have any of the standards to show that they are authorized to do it, or that they are handling people's data correctly, which is not proper, and most business will not trust them. So having all those controls put in place, having all those contracts, all those compliance, adhering to all those compliance will help companies to trust you, to partner with you. It will even help individuals to also make use of your products and to trust you to make use of your products, so that their data are safe with you. So, but when you don't have the certification, when you don't have the standard, just like as a sample, you don't have the certification and handling people's data and information, it simply means that you cannot even trust, you cannot even protect this, so people cannot trust you to do anything with you. So with that, I have actually developed a risk register. So the first thing that you can use Excel, you can use Power BI, but I'm going to be using Excel in this video. So the first thing that's going to be in your risk register is your title. So this is Swiss shop, e-commerce. Another thing that can also be in your risk register is this document classification. It's internal documents. Then document author, who is the person that develops the document, who is the owner of it, the version. So this is the first version for them because it's their first time they are conducting risk assessment, and it's the version 1. Then you add the dates that it develops the document. So the next thing that we are going to after that is your risk metrics. I have explained what the risk metrics is all about. So this is how the risk metrics looks like. We classify risk metrics using likelihood and impact. So this is impact, this is likelihood. So if the likelihood that the risk will occur is 5, then the impact that it will occur is 1. It means just as like it's 5 times 1 is 5. That means it's low. So if the risk is between 1 to 5, it means that the risk is low. And if the risk is low, you can accept the risk and monitor it. I'm going to teach you guys how to treat risk, how to decide if you're going to treat risk, the risk adjustment criteria. Then if the risk is between 6 to 10, that means you have to like to apply minor controls and still monitor it. If the risk is between 11 to 15, that means the risk is high. It requires corrective action and control should be implemented within 48 days. Then if the risk score is 16 to 20, then it's very, very high. Implement controls and should be implemented earlier than if it's high. Then if it's critical, that means there needs to be immediate control. That is, it can, if the risk is critical, that means it can destroy like your business. The risk is very high to like destroy your business in a short period of time. So it's like to take immediate action immediately. So we normally use like to decide to present these things with colors. So if the risk is high, if it's critical, we present it with black. If it's 4, you can use orange. If it's 5, you use red. Then if it's 3, use orange. Then if it's 2, use yellow. Then if it's 1, use green. So from just like I've said when I said when we started, I think we're going to be using ISO 7001 guideline. So after you finish identifying your risk, the next thing you're going to do is risk analysis. And for risk analysis, so in risk analysis, we have 2 types of risk analysis. We have the qualitative versus the quantitative risk analysis. So the qualitative risk analysis is like the what, and the quantitative is the how much. So the qualitative risk analysis answers the question, which risks are the most important? And that is like the qualitative risk analysis is the most common approach that people use. Just like, and it's normally they use like the likelihood and the impact. They use numbers. They use low, medium, high, or numeric expressions like 1, 2, 3 to count it. That's like the most common one that most small businesses used to use. Why the quantitative risk analysis answers the question, what is the actual numerical impact? They want to know like if this thing happens, what will it destroy? So that is the difference between like the both of them. So after the risk analysis, the next, just like I said, we are using the qualitative, that is the likelihood and the impact, the what. We want to know the risk. We want to know like the highest one. Then, but if you're using the quantitative, you want to know how much this thing is going to like to affect the organization. So the next one here that we have is risk evaluation. But before we get to the risk evaluation, I'm going to show you the risk register. What is contained in the risk register? So this is the risk register. This is how it looks like. The first thing you're going to see in your risk, this is how your risk register looks like. So the things that are always in the risk register are the first one, the risk ID, the assets, risk description, threat, vulnerability, likelihood, impact, risk score, risk rating, risk owner, existing control, treatment plan, mitigation strategy, duration, identified risk, and dates it was identified, and the status of the risk. So I'm going to like quickly explain what these headlines are. So for the first one is the risk ID. So the risk ID is like a unique identifier assigned to each identified risk for tracking and references. Then the next one is description. The description is a clear explanation of the risk scenarios. Then the next one is the assets. The asset is the system, our data, processes, or resources that are at risk. Of course, assets are things that are like valuable, that um, our valuable stuff that if an attacker sees, or if a bad guy sees, that they are going to like to exploit. So these are what an asset is. And the next one is the risk description. So the risk description has to do with this description has, I've said it has to do with clear explanation of the risk scenarios, including potential outcomes. And the next one is threats. Then threat is the potential source or cause of the risk. So what are our threats? Threats can be insider threats, can be external threats like hackers and all that. The next one is vulnerabilities. So vulnerabilities are weaknesses that could be exploited by the threats. So if you have identified, okay, let me use the first one we have here is this is the risk ID. Risk number one has to do with company reputation and client trust. So from our case study, you can see unauthorized access to the sensitive company data. And here we have company reputation, that the assets that is at risk here is the company reputation and clients trust. So this is a description of what happened, of the scenario. So a confirmed failure in the offboarding process has resulted in an unauthorized ex-employee accessing sensitive clients' data. This could lead to intellectual property theft, competitive disadvantage, direct financial loss, legal action from the client, and severe reputational damage. So this is like describing the risk that you found. So this the risk that we found, the risk that was confirmed is unauthorized access. So this is the threat that the unauthorized access, this is the asset that the unauthorized access can get hold of, and this is the description of what happened. Then the next one is the threat. What is the threat that is there? Is malicious ex-employee. It was there. Then the next one is vulnerability. What are the weakness? Complete failure of the employee's access revocation process upon termination. So what is the weakness that was there? What caused it? What made this ex-employee to be a threat? Why? How did they get to the asset? And how can the employee get to the asset? Or how did they get to the asset? How? Because after the employee stopped working for them, he still has access to the data. That is for this one. Then the next one we have here is likelihood and impact. So likelihood is the probability of risk occurring. So what is the probability that this thing is going to happen? Then the impact is the severity of the consequences if the risk occurs. So likelihood is if this risk occurs, what is the probability that this risk is going to happen? What is the probability that this thing is going to happen? And the impact is if it happens, what will happen? So that is likelihood and impact. And we use numbers to classify them, and that is where the risk matrix comes in. So if in your organization that you decide that for this risk that was identified, that the likelihood that it might occur, okay, maybe the likelihood that this ex-employee has full rights access is 4. That this employee that has to full rights access might see, and from our case study, it says that he's also now a direct competitor. More like maybe he went and built the same idea that Swift ship have. So if that means there's a likelihood that with the data that he has access to, can actually use it to know you people's idea, to get people's idea. So what is it like? So if you put it that it is 4, okay, and if he has people's if he gets people's data, if he has people's idea, what is the impact is going to, how will the impact be for you people? Of course, it's going to be high, right? It's going to be very high. So let me leave it at 4. So you now give it 4 times 4 is 16. So we have 16. The risk score is 16. And if you go to our risk metrics, 16 here, 16 our risk metrics, we agree that 16 to 20 is very high. So 16 to 20 is very high, which is orange. And if it's very high, what are we supposed to do? We have to implement a corrective action, and controls should be implemented within 28 days. So this is a very high risk. So we need to mitigate it. So let me add very high. Very high. So who is the owner of this risk? Who is supposed to onboard this ex-employee? It's the head of HR or the HR. So that's where the risk owner comes in. So the risk score, the risk rating, and the risk owner. So let me just quickly explain these three parts. So the risk score is the numerical or categorized score calculated using likelihood and impact. So the risk score is, if you calculate the likelihood and impact, which is mostly if you times it, you're going to get the risk score. So the risk rating is the qualitative risk level based on risk score. So what is the level is very high, so that's the risk rating. Then the other one is the risk owner. Who is the owner of the risk? The owner of the risk is the individual that is responsible for managing the risk. So who was supposed to onboard the ex-employee? It's the HR. So that's the owner of the risk, and that's the person that's supposed to also remove the assets that the ex-employees have. So the risk, the HR is the risk owner. Then is there any existing control before? No. If there's an existing control before, you can add yes. You add yes to it. And then the next one we have is treatment plan. So let me go back to the ISO 27001. So after the risk analysis, the next one we have is risk evaluation. So what is this risk evaluation? This risk evaluation has to do with before we make a decision on if you are going to be treating the risk, we have to check our appetite and our capacity. So risk evaluation has to do with appetite versus capacity. So before we go get to treatment, before we evaluate the risk, we have to understand our limits. We have to check what our organization is willing to take in. So what organization A is willing to take in is not the same thing that organization B is willing to take in. So that is where risk evaluation comes in. So there are some organizations that can actually pay for ransom. Why? Although it's not advised to pay for ransom, but there's an organization that has the money to pay for it. Why there are some that don't have it? There are some organizations that prefer the reputational damage to pay for ransom to keep their reputation than to. But there's some organizations that prefer damage reputation and because we don't have the money for the ransom. So that is where you can make decision on what is acceptable to you people and what is not acceptable. So it's more that is where risk appetite and the risk capacity comes in. So the risk appetite has to do with how much risk are we willing to take. Then the risk capacity has to do with how much risk can we actually survive. So what is the risk appetite answers the question, what is our comfort zone? So what is more like you are eating, how much food can you take in? So why the risk capacity is how much risk can we actually survive. So it's like the maximum amount of risk an organization can absorb without going out of business. So the risk are more like how much risk an organization survive without shutting down their business. So it answers the question, what is our breaking point? So the risk appetite answers the question, what is our comfort zone? The risk capacity answers the question, what is our breaking point? So, and that is where that is the one that gets us to the treatment plan, which is we have 4 treatment plans. We have if we are to accept the risk, or if we are to avoid the risk, or if we are to mitigate the risk, or if we are this is the treatment plan: avoid, accept, transfer, or mitigate the risk. So that is where this treatment plans comes in. So if after doing this evaluation, it's from the evaluation that we get these numbers to get, okay, we have evaluated and okay, if this thing occurs, the likelihood, if this thing occurs, it's for that is the analysis. Okay, if it occurs, that's where you decide this number. Okay, if this thing happens, you can be able to to take in, or we cannot take in. Then once we decide from here, we have decided that our treatment, we are going to like, it's a lot for us, right? We can also use color to work on this treatment plan, like mitigate is red, like it means transfer is yellow, accept is green, and avoid is black. So to mitigate it, you can transfer it to insurance or third party. So to mitigate it, we said that is mitigation. Then another one is mitigation strategy. So the mitigation strategy is the specific plan of action designed to reduce the likelihood of a risk. So more like the action that we are going to take to reduce the risk since we have decided to like to mitigate it. So that's for that one. Then the next one we have is duration. How long is this going to take? So because this risk is because from our risk register, we decide that if it's 16 to 20, 28 days, it's going to take us 28 days. So before 28 days, actually. So the highest that you are giving for this risk to be mitigated is 28 days. The next one is the date that this risk was identified. So you're going to add the date that this risk was found. Then the status. This status has to do with, is it open? If the risk is still open, that means that it have not been mitigated. There's still a problem. So then another one, if it has been mitigated, the add closed. So if somebody looks at your risk register, the person can see that, okay, this part is done. Then if the mitigation process is still on, we add in progress. So, but once you are done with it, you change it to green. So that is how you can track and assess your risk register in your organization. For this is the case study. So you can decide to finish up the remaining two. Can decide to finish up this remaining two. So yeah, this is how to conduct a risk assessment in your organization. So I'm going to be stopping here. If you understood what I taught today, if you understand anything, if you understand everything, or if you have any question, you can drop it in the comment section. Or if you want me to make a particular video on any topic on JRC and or project management, just let me know in the comment section, and I'm going to like to get the video done. So please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to like my video. Don't forget to share my video. Bye.